let me introduce you to our great speaker. Well, it is, yes, thank you, Elizabeth. It is a huge honor and pleasure for me to introduce a coach that is also just like me, coming from Belgium. I have the honor to have here with me Johan Van de Put, who is the actual president of ICF Belgian chapter, and we have a long history of collaboration together, so we know each other pretty well, and we try to help each other as much as possible in the coaching business. Now, what I like so much about Johan is that he has a unique background as a coach. He has been responsible in IT functions, and apart from that, he's also specialized in Scrum and Agile coaching. He's got a green belt in that expertise. So this gives us a very unique mix of a coaching profile, which is combined in a very technical background, IT, and evaluated later on to coaching expertise. So, Johan, I'm very glad to have you here, my good friends, and good luck. Please share the screen.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, Carl, for this nice introduction, and hello to everyone who is attending. I'm very honored with the interest that you show to this type of topics. And indeed, as said Carl, I have an IT background. I've been educated in IT and economics, but all my career as a salary employee was always in the IT. For those who are interested in MBTI and Enneagram, I am an INFJ and I'm a type 3 Enneagram. So just to say that this is my first webinar, and usually I feel much better when I talk to a living audience that looks at me and from whom I receive a lot of feedback, but it's the way it is. So I do my best to do this as best entertaining as possible. So I've been in consulting in IT organizations from 1994, so it's a long time ago. And during that time, I came across, I was working as a project manager very often, and I came across the situations that the different teams within the same organizations operated in different ways. And some teams were more effective than teams, whereas they were working all for the same boss in the same department with the same procedures, same processes, etc. But still there were differences, and therefore I was interested in how that came, and so I was looking around for solutions to find the ways how to deal with that, and then I came across human synergistics. So I hope that you will not find my presentation too much as a product presentation, because that's not the idea. It's also not a selling presentation. I just wanted to share with you my experiences with it and how it helped me to better understand how teams were in fact collaborating and what were the real group dynamics that were playing at each time. So let's start. And as you see, the statement that I put up there is something that I regularly came across and still come across, so that leaders, they see that their teams are not always working effectively, and consciously or sometimes also unconsciously, team members seem to work rather against each other rather than with each other. So when you see the guy thinking about who should I put in my team so that they work well together, and that's what it's all about in this hour that I will try to explain. So before I want to come to a case study, because the idea in fact is to discuss with you a case study that I experienced recently with a big customer. And but before going to that, I need to give you some theoretical explanation about the models that I've been using. So what is collaboration and interaction in general? In fact, we can bring it down to this very schematical picture showing that, let me just, can you see my cursor? Maybe I can put it clear. So that in organizations there's always, the leaders tend to find ideal situations, and therefore they start building missions and philosophy around which they want their employees to work. So around their shared values, they want to implement the shared values of all stakeholders, and doing that it gives a certain picture, certain graph. How we come to that graph, I explained it later. Just want to show you that this desired situation, so the ideal collaboration and interaction shared values, they can be put in a graph, and to be able to implement this, so the leaders start writing missions, they talk about philosophy, they start building structures, systems, technology, they recruit skills and quality team members and different qualities, and they expect that the operations at a given time, they act the same way as they would have hoped to. Now, in many cases, this is not the case. That's why there are so many and very often conflicts in organizations, because people working at the floor, they perceive it differently from how the leaders, with the best intentions, try to write the best mission statement, discuss philosophy, have a lot of attention for their employees. So, but then still there are differences between what is expected and what is really experienced on the floor. Now, the bigger difference there is between the two, the more unpredictable, I would say, the outcomes are on individual level, on group level, or on organizational level. Now, today in this hour I will try to show something about the group outcomes, how we can work with them, but just to be complete, this method, so these graphs can be used on either level as well, individual. Then we're talking more about lifestyles. Here we talk about group styles, and here we talk about organizational and cultural styles. So if we stay with the group styles to look at them, so we have the group style circumplex, which is in fact the tool. And for each group, there are different factors that are leading to the different styles. So the model that we are using is the model of human synergistics, and it looks at 12 different styles or orientations that you could call. So on individual level, these are lifestyles, but they carry the same name. In groups, they are group styles, and in organizations, they are cultural styles. So the member characteristics and group characteristics, you can read them for yourself. Age and education, of course, they play a big part in how a group behaves. Also, the percentage male and female, for instance, how the group is composed, play a role in how the group is behaving. Of course, the experience as a group. Is this a group that is newly put together, or is it a group that has already been working together for a long time? And in IT, very often when projects are launched, new groups are formed on a regular basis. For each project, different types, because different skill sets can be needed. And of course also organizational characteristics. The different types of industries also can lead to different types of behavior and dynamics in groups. The outcomes can be mostly on the team itself. They can have the feeling whether they have been effective or not, and in what degree that they are really committed to the group. And then related to the solutions, whether the solution has a good quality, whether it has been accepted. And the feeling that people have is whether there was enough synergy from the team coming off or not. And so we talk about a perceived synergy and an objective synergy. Now, what is an objective synergy? Next to the tools from Human Synergistics, they have also simulations with expert scores where people can, in fact, using the tool, measure the outcome of the group compared to the expert score. And that is kind of artificial, but it is still a way to compare progress or not in synergy and in decision making and in constructive group behavior. So this is how the group styles look like in more detail. I have a small exercise coming up now where I can try to illustrate a little bit with you what it is, but and then I will go a little bit further in detail on the different styles and the different elements of this profile. I believe that most of you received, and I hope all of you have received or have been able to download these two forms, this one and this one. So we'll take this one first. What I will do is I take
Johan, just a minute.
Question.
For the participants,
yes.
For the participants that have not received the mail up front with the invitation to download the handout, you can still download them right now because they are also down under in the GoToWebinar application. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Carlo. So I will let you score two styles of this circumplex, and I will read to you some statements, and I ask you to listen carefully to the statement and then indicate in each box for each question that I will indicate, for each statement, sorry, I will indicate whether in the past experience that you had with a team meeting where you had either to solve problems or do some or obtain other goals, whether the statement was present or not, whether it was true or not. So I would say take kind of 10 seconds or 15 seconds to think about a meeting that you recently had with a group of people where you had to achieve something. So I'll give you a couple of seconds more. Okay. Then I will read you the first statement. The first statement to fill your score from 0 to 4 in this box. So overall, to what extent in this meeting was the communication supportive and constructive? You write from 0 to 4 in this box. The second statement, and please don't think too much about the score to give. The first idea is very often mostly the best one. Second one, in this box, was there an atmosphere of conflict and disagreement? The box upper two. To what extent did members actively help one another to understand the nature of the problem and the key issues? The lower two. To what extent were members made to feel they had to defend their viewpoints? Next one, number 3. To what extent was the group helpful to you in crystallizing your ideas? Each time a score from 0 to 4. Lower 3. To what extent were ideas opposed too quickly, rather than added to a list of alternatives to be considered? So parking list. Next one. To what extent did the group accept and build on ideas offered by individual members? Next one. To what extent were ideas and suggestions subjected to criticism? Next one. To what extent did you get thoughtful feedback on your ideas and suggestions? Next one. To what extent were people's ideas put down and negated? The next one. To what extent was benign concern shown for people's doubts and reservations? And the last one. To what extent were members good at giving criticism, but not necessarily good at taking it? So if you have all your scores, you can totalize horizontally, put the total here, and totalize this second line horizontally, put the total there. So you obtain a certain score. The first line that you filled in, the first total, indicates the total for style 1. So the humanistic, encouraging. If you look at the second page that you received, you can draw the score of your line. The score of your line, yes, on this scale. Just draw a score like here. And then you can fill it up from the center up. The second line was a total for style 7, oppositional. There again, you will find the score, and you can draw a line and fill it up until, from the center up until that line. So if we would fill the complete questionnaire with, which is in fact 72 questions, in general it takes 15 to 20 minutes for a group to fill it in, then you obtain a picture like this. Okay. Now before I go further and explain further about these styles, which will become obvious in my further explanation, just a brief explanation on the model. You see that these styles, they have certain, they are grouped in a certain way. If you do a vertical split, you will find most of the styles oriented for people orientation at the right side, and at the left side for task orientation. If you do a horizontal split, then you will see the styles oriented versus the satisfaction needs in the upper half, and the lower half versus the security needs. That's quite...
Johan, I have to interrupt you briefly here. I've got a question here. Are there 2 scores in total or 1 score? Somebody totaled the numbers into 1 score. Is it 1 or 2?
two scores. So the upper line, horizontal line, was for style 1, and the second one was for style 7.
Yes. Okay. And then another remark for Elizabeth Jackson. Elizabeth, for some reason I'm not able to type anything into chat box. Up to you to research on that. Sorry. Sorry, Johan, continue.
Okay, thank you. So if we'll look a little bit further then, this is a little bit theoretical, I know, but I need to do this to be able to understand a little bit more in the case study. So let's look at the circumplex, and let's look at mostly, in fact, at the different clusters without going in too much detail on the different styles. But you will see that the passive defensive styles, the styles clustered here, they are mostly oriented, if you do the vertical split, to the people orientation and to the security orientation. And these styles typically describe the passive defensive styles. Typical for these for groups who have styles who are primarily dominant here, they will have less than optimal solutions. And for them, it's more important to be safe than to cooperate, in fact, to the common goal of the group. So for them, in fact, they will put the goal of the group higher than their own goal. So they will stay aloof, as we say. So this is something that I did find very often in very huge organizations, big departments. There is a lot going on. You very often have people that are a little bit shy or new in the department, and automatically they become a little bit dependent. They are told to use the rules, they get their training, they become a little bit conventional, etc. What I did with the customer was a workshop before scoring these styles, and these are some of the typical statements that came out of that workshop. I'll go in more detail to that in the case study itself. The next one is the aggressive defensive styles, and we call them aggressive defensive. Aggressive, in fact, because they are mostly oriented towards the task. And you see here power and oppositional is one of the aggressive defensive styles. I see them often in organizations where there are a lot of experts, and IT organizations, for instance, where there is a lot of engineering, there are a lot of experts, and experts consciously or often unconsciously also use a lot of power, and can be sometimes some opposition also. So these are the styles, and the quality of the solutions is not always of the best quality. Why? Because there's a lot of power and control at stake. So for these groups where these styles are more important, yes, I have indicated here, it's not always, does not need to be this aggressive as this Jack Russell is showing his teeth, but sometimes can be very quiet, but also aggressive when there is a lot of political game going on, for instance. But here also you find some of the statements that came out of the workshop. We will discuss a little bit later, that illustrates why these styles and this cluster can be dominant sometimes in groups. And then we have at last the constructive styles. There you see, in fact, they are totally oriented versus the satisfaction needs, and they have rather good balance between task and people orientation. And in general, the experience showed, and that's also when this tool was developed, that groups with dominant behavior in this cluster, they are the most effective groups. They obtain the best solutions, the most effective solutions, because they all work together and they interact very well. So this is typical picture at the left for effective groups. So they have dominance in constructive styles, and less effective groups have the dominance in either of the defensive styles. Now, how did human synergistics come to this model? I very briefly explained. The first model that they used was a lifestyle, so it was in fact a self-descriptive tool they used to describe successful and less successful CEOs, so executive leaders of companies. They have questioned, I think, around 1,000 CEOs, and it was typical for those who were very successful and very effective that they maintained a good balance between task orientation and people orientation. And out of this study and out of these interviews, so they have derived those 12 orientations, and then throughout the years they have been developing this tool so that they could apply it as well now for as well groups as we are using now as for organizations. And what you will see, if I can go back quickly, is that for each level you will have different weights, because what we do, what is happening is in fact a group, when they fill in a questionnaire, they compare themselves with, in this case for the groups, over 1,000 groups that have filled in this type of questionnaire. So there's a little bit on the statistical side, but I don't want to go into too much detail. So what's important to understand is that in any team activity, when there is a meeting or work groups or workshops working together, there are always two processes going on simultaneously, and one process is the rational process and the other one is the interpersonal process, and you need both to be well present and in a good way in order to be able to have this equation, so that an effective solution in fact is the product of a quality solution and an accepted solution. So if either of the one is missing, then you cannot have an effective solution. So you can have the best technical quality solution. If it's not accepted by the members, then the implementation of it may not always be the best. And of course, yeah, everyone can accept a certain solution of lower quality, but then yeah, it's clear that also that will not be effective. I believe that's clear. So if a problem needs to be solved, or if certain solutions need to be found, then of course what you need is the skills, you need the knowledge, and you need the resources with these skills and knowledge to be able to come up with something decent. But what most groups do well and look at is the rational skills. So they analyze the solution, they set objectives, they try to cut down the problem in pieces to simplify it. But then in considering alternatives and discussing the consequences, it's not always enough done. So what's very often lacking, and that's where coaching very often comes in, is that we can learn them, because very often it happens unconsciously. We can learn them to listen more to be explicitly supportive in the team towards the other members, specifically supportive from the experts, for instance, to the others who are maybe less expert but can have original ideas and original input. Also to consider and to consider the differences in the team of knowledge, of experience, etc. Also the participation, to make sure that everyone is really participating, and to strive for consensus. So very often decisions are taken by voting, but as you know, as coaches, if you vote, then there are always losers. And we try to obtain decisions and try the best acceptance if there is a consensus. Now, the model that we have been discussed supports these, and the two most important styles, in fact, that relate to these two processes are the 11th style, the achievement, where the members are really concerned with getting things done and perform well. So that is analyzing, setting objectives, etc., planning. And the style 1, which is humanistic encouraging, where members are really constructive, sensitive, and supportive. So if these styles are well present in a group, then in general they come up with good solutions and with good performance. And what we also see often is when these two are very dominant present, then automatically the self-actualizing is in fact where there is a lot of optimism, that people are interested, but sometimes not very well organized. But there are many ideas, there's good involvement, solutions are very creative, can be innovative also, etc. So they bring along this style 12 also.
Johan, there are some questions coming in on this tool. First of all, in the actual survey, are people, for example, asked about their last meeting with their team, or was that kind of topics framed? And secondly, how have you used this tool actually for team coaching? Could you give an example of that? Or maybe this is still coming further, I don't know.
Well, this will be coming further in the case study, definitely.
Okay. And also whether it can be done online.
Sorry?
Also whether it can be done online.
Yes, indeed. This can be done online, but what I don't do this very often, because I used to use the paper version because it eases the acceptance of the scores. Because if you do it online, then people tend to be, maybe don't trust the mechanics behind it or whatever, or in the algorithms that may be used to influence the scores. So that's why I use mostly a paper version, and as I said, it's best to do it immediately after a meeting has happened, and so that it's very fresh in memory and that people can in fact describe how they sensed the meeting. Okay. Are there more questions on the theory, Karel?
No, not for the moment.
Okay. So how will we use this in team coaching? I'll come to that in a minute. So the case study is, in fact, was about a big project, an IT outsourcing project. For those who are not familiar with IT, the recent tendency in IT is to maintain only the top level skills within the organization themselves and to outsource the building part of the IT systems. So, and therefore they often try to talk to a provider who will take on the development work of the IT system and then afterwards deliver it. So in this particular case, it was a project. This was a huge project. It was plus 40,000 man days, which is very huge, and it was not going very well, not surprisingly. This big type of project that you want to outsource. So the provider had to provide a fixed price for doing all this work. And this, of course, created a lot of tensions in trust and confidence. And so how does it go? The client has to deliver a lot of products, and the client has to do knowledge transfer to the provider. The provider has to well understand the requirements. Then this kind of more or less black box, the provider start building and developing upon the requirements of the client, and then after a number of months they come out with products that the client has to accept. Now, of course, during this period there is a program planning and release planning with different milestones where progress is checked. The collaboration of this type of organization is influenced by a lot of things, as you can see here below. So planning and support, the atmosphere in the teams, the collaboration between the different project leaders of the client and project leaders of the provider have to talk to each other, discuss with each other. There is a lot of governance going on both sides. And of course, the trust and confidence is very often at stake. And the idea is really to find ways to build up this trust and confidence. So what we did was we did a workshop with each team. So with the team of the client and the team of the provider separately, and we asked them to think about the recent ways of collaborating together in different meetings, in different setups, and try them to shout a little bit kind of statements. And there it's very important that we listen very carefully to what is said, and to try to link then all the statements to certain and to categorize them according to the different styles of the circumplex that we have seen. You can see for yourself here the different statements that were made. So these were made by client and provider, these were made by the client, these were made by the provider. Sometimes you can see that they are finger pointing at each other, but they were separate, so they didn't know of each other. Also, so in different categories of the work meetings here, also the client and the provider had felt the same discomfort, in fact. So the idea is to listen very carefully to what's said, and afterwards, after we have captured all the statements, either on flip chart or on audio, to put them, to relate them to the styles, so that we can understand afterwards when they fill out the questionnaire, to come up with or to understand and to be able to give some examples of what happened. So the members of the teams did not know anything about the model themselves, that they just fill in the questionnaire to be able to describe what they felt in the different types of interactions that they had so far. Afterwards, the questionnaires were processed, and they gave a global view of the collaboration in this project. And if you can see, this is how the team members perceived the actual collaboration. We did the second workshop with the teams again separately and asked them to think about how the collaboration would be most successful and how that would look like, to describe it with their own words. And then after that they also filled in a questionnaire to describe the desired state, in fact, in which they would like to work. Now, how can we coach teams? This is where it comes. If we go from an as-is situation, we can bring them to this to-be situation by asking the different team members in consecutive workshops or at the presentation of this to what styles they would like to put most focus. And that would be then, for instance, at either decreasing one of the defensive styles or increasing one of the constructive styles. But this created a lot of awareness with the people because they knew it was not going well, but this really creates kind of a shock effect. They both were willing, so this is the combination of the both teams. They both were willing to go for it and to make it work. So typically is that they both score high here on conventional. So that means that in fact they want to stay conventional also in the new desired state. And that they expressed the will to work on those two styles. So they were considered as the coming challenges then. Here you see the actual view of the collaboration from each team different, from the provider and the client. You can see here that the provider was a little bit more constructive than the client. Again, that created more awareness. And then for the desired diagram, you can see that the provider side and the client side, they were more or less the same, but again, they stay very conventional. So what this told the team, in fact, is yes, okay, we want to change, but in fact, it's more or less the other we want to change. That was also an awareness for them, so that they were looking at the other one to change first before they would change. So with this type of information, we went then into workshops, and the workshops where it was breakout sessions. These breakout sessions were guided by a consultant coach, and they were put together by the project responsibles. So the leaders of the project. So and I believe at the time we had 5 breakout sessions where the teams could discuss the different learnings that they had obtained during the presentation of these actuals and desired outcomes. And then and at that time, then they come out with challenges that they would like to achieve, that we will look in a minute. But it is clear that in each team, as we know, those who have been working with the teams, there are, when you form a team before it becomes a performant team, there are always 4 phases that each team goes through, and one team goes faster through that process than another team. But it was clear that the team of that customer was in the storming phase. So
Johan,
in the forming...
there is another interesting question coming in,
okay.
related to teams working together. If you have a team deep into competition with not a lot of trust between each other and with a leader who delegates the problem to his directors, what's the best approach? Which steps? So I believe you shared a story about teams that prefer to rather be conservative about their styles, but what do you do and how can this tool help if you have a lot of competition in between in the team, dividing the team into two sub-teams?
If there's a lot of competition, then the best way to do is to ask them, to ask the team how they would like to go forward. Because when there is a lot of competition, and then probably the people in the team will recognize that there is a lot of improvement to be done, it can be achieved, then it is clear that in asking the question when at the team themselves that they will have to tackle one of those constructive styles, for instance, and then the tool can provide either a number of actions that can help to develop certain styles, or we can ask as a coach the team themselves to come up with actions that they feel that go best with them to develop certain constructive styles. So I think it needs first to be made aware to the both teams, because competition can be also driven by power or by perfectionism. So, and if this competition is going too high, then indeed people will not support other teams, and the acceptance of the solution will not be very high. Was that an answer to the question?
I think so. Just one extra comment. What if one director is a big 8 and the other peaceful 9 within that competition? So an 8 versus peaceful 9.
Well, these styles that we have discussed are a description, are the perception of the team members of how the team collaborates. Now, what you also can do is use the lifestyles. There you can ask the team members to describe themselves, and at that point people start to understand in what way that they contribute to the either defensive styles or the constructive styles of the team. And doing this personal lifestyle questionnaire for a boss which is using a lot of power, it will become clear that he will become aware of the impact of his power on the team, and that he will start understanding and becoming aware that the team follows him because of his power and not because of they think for themselves. So for these, typical in these stages is here that team members are looking on how to fill their positions. Here people are taking position more in the team, and then it's time that project managers or the leaders start norming the team. So this is the way how we will be working together, setting up rules and ways to work together, and that will then gradually lead to a more constructive styles and high performance. team. So showing this to them also was making them aware of that there was something to do, and we had to call them to action. So I tried to condense on one slide what happened afterwards. So in those breakout sessions, people came back with different challenges to which they had agreed as a group on the to be able to promote the constructive styles as they indicated in their desired model, and then they prioritized. So that's why you see the 1, 2, 3, 4. They prioritized them on which one that they would work first, and after that, then once there was an agreement and an acceptance on the challenges themselves and on the prioritization of the challenges, they went back into breakout sessions, and they had to come up with plans and objectives to translate these in short term and on long term. So the short term, they had to come up with actions that they would do within the 2 weeks, and with objectives that they would do within on the longer term 3 months. The idea then is to remeasure afterwards, after 6 months for instance, or 3 months depending on the situation, and to see whether there has been progress or not. What also worked well, I see I have only 5 minutes left, what I did also as in a coaching approach is that from the questionnaire you can derive the questions that describe a certain group style that they want to increase or improve, for instance, and just put them on a paper tab in each meeting room, and then so that to motivate the people that after the meeting they just score the meeting on how they perceived it. And one, it helps when they do the meeting, when they are doing the meeting, they know they will have to do a little inventory about a given style. So that also helps already in improving the collaboration and the interaction between the different team members. I know it was a lot of information on a short scale, on short time. I hope I was clear, and I leave it open to questions for the last couple of minutes then. Karel?
Yes, one has just arrived. When do we know that there is nothing we can do as interventions like team coaching, etc., but trust is lost for good and that we have to change team members? I think that the person refers to the difficulty. From which area do you know that team coaching is no longer a solution because all trust is gone for good and the only thing you can do is simply changing team members?
I think doing the exercise makes people, I've seen that people decide themselves that they do not fit in the team, and that they take the decision themselves because of the awareness that has been created, not only with the group styles, but also with the lifestyles, which is a personal description, so that they see that they do not fit with what the team wants to achieve. For instance, that they don't seem that they fit with the challenges that are chosen by the team to go forward, for instance. So we have to separate the actually working, collaborating of the team and how the team perceives the collaboration. But very often it comes out of the group session, and I believe that either the coach and or the manager can do some assessment and decide on how to go about with one or more of the team members.
Okay, thank you, Johan. Is another interesting one, I think. Is this only a self-perception model? Is it workable for 360-degree assessments? Are there any group profiles available, or is it strictly an individual matter?
No, it is also used for 360-degree feedback. Then the questionnaires are aimed at describing a colleague or a subordinate or even a boss, and you can find, in fact, if you Google on human synergistics, you will find their website on Human Synergistics International, and there you will find there is really a great variety of typical of questionnaires for different types of approaches. And
okay. Johan, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm getting some messages that some people need to leave the webinar, some that have been calling in over the phone that need a second password. So the second password is